So next we're going to talk about the fascia, and there's a lot of information on the fascia and a lot of research that's coming out on the fascia. So we could talk about the fascia for a long time, and I would actually really enjoy that. But what I'd like to do is really give you a kind of a brief overview of the fascia as it relates to this introduction to anatomy. So the best way to think of the fascia is to think of it like saran wrap. You can think of this saran wrap, this kind of cling wrap that helps to encapsulate and connect the muscles to each other and really hold everything together. The fascia is going to surround pretty much everything in the body. We've got the muscles encapsulated in fascia, we've got the blood vessels, the nerves, the organs, the bones. Everything is going to be encapsulated in this fascia and separated into different containers, different compartments, as well as connected to other muscle groups. And this is really important not only to help support the body, this kind of encapsulation of the fascia helps to support and contain the muscles and the structures of the body, but also to some extent helps to position the body, helps to shape the body, and create this kind of tension system. I mentioned before thinking of the muscles pulling on the bones like puppet strings. Now, you can kind of think of that in a really general sense of thinking of this tension system of the body and all of the muscles. And the fascia is this connector between the muscles to really connect and unify this tension system so that it's not just one movement that's happening, but this whole complexity of movements that happens as the muscles connect and interrelate to each other. And the fascia is really the primary part of that creates that. So when we look at the fascia, it not only does this kind of connection and integration, but it also allows us to be supported and hold us upright. This connection allows the muscles to really assist each other. And I like to think of this as like the symphony effect of the muscles working together. You can clearly think about one instrument in the symphony playing alone could be really fantastic and beautiful, and clearly we could use one muscle in isolation, and that could be really helpful in some contexts. But the symphony effect of them all playing together is really where we allow ourselves to not only move more efficiently, but also disperse effort so that no one muscle has to work too hard. I like to compare this to, say, if you were to take a week off of your job and you were to go away and ask someone to take over for you. Clearly, just like your muscles, there are other muscles that can do that job, potentially. There's rarely one part of the body that only has one muscle that performs that function. So if one muscle decides it's not going to function properly, maybe it's irritated or injured for some reason, there are other muscles that will pick up. So if you were to leave work and have someone fill in for you for a week, they might be able to come in and do your job. They're probably not going to know it as well as you do. They're probably not going to be as efficient at your job as you are because you know it and you do it really well. But they can pick up, right? They can help cover for you while you're gone. Now, if you go away on a teacher training and you go away for a week and decide to stay longer, at some point they're probably going to get irritated and be annoyed that you haven't come back to do your job. Just like the muscles, the muscles they're really built to adapt and be able to support each other and really work in a sense of community. But the problem arises when one muscle stops working for a long period of time and the other muscles start to get irritated and agitated as well. There is this symphony effect of each one doing its job. You wouldn't ask the trumpet player to go and play the flute because he probably wouldn't be very good at it. But what ends up happening is that each one of those members of the symphony performs its part and can kind of help out a little bit here or there, but that no one of them will be as efficient at doing someone else's job. So when we look at the muscles, we want to think of this sense of this symphony effect and the fascia really coordinating a lot of that, of the ability of the muscles to work together, to be able to work like a community, to help the body be supported, to move, again, and find this balance of not only flexibility, but also stability, that ability to create integrity in both the efficiency of our movement as well as the health of the joints in that balance of support and mobility. When we look at the fascia, another thing that's really interesting to take note of is that the fascia also has the ability to contract to some extent. Now, this contraction is going to be different than a muscle contraction. It's not the ability to contract and relax like our biceps might be able to. But this contraction happens, and I like to think of this more of a sense of memory of the fascia as well, that the fascia can contract to support and even create memories in the soft tissue. And these are usually more long-term, happening over time. One that we see a lot is this tendency, the slouch, right? And that over time, our body repostures and repositions itself, and our tissues start to adapt to that. Now, the fascia becomes a component of that memory of being able to kind of encase all of these muscles and hold them in these positions. As a result of us doing things constantly over time, we learn new patterns, which can be a positive thing or a negative thing. Now, clearly in a yoga practice, we can use that to our benefit and recognize that the things that we do over and over, the postures that we take over and over, are going to have a greater effect, not only neurologically, but also on the fascia and the way that the muscles fire, as well as our posture, which we're very familiar with. That posture is really a learned thing, clearly something that takes place in relationship to gravity, but also a learned position. Yoga is a really important part of reprogramming these patterns, whether we're thinking about the fascia and the adaptive changes that the fascia can make, or whether we're thinking about the neurologic system, that there is this important kind of reprogramming that happens in the yoga practice. Then within the fascia itself, again, just thinking about it as this layer, this continuous layer, and really when we look at the fascia, a continuous layer from head to toe that connects and interrelates all of these very separate parts and helps them create this continuous kind of framework that allows the tissues not only to communicate with each other, but to support each other and connect with each other. So a really interesting concept that clearly we could talk a lot more on, but in a very general sense, I think gives you a really clear framework to add on top of the specifics that we'll look at to the anatomy as well.